listening to Words About Books. Today we're talking about he's a little known author. We talked about him last year too.
Yeah, we gave him the Words About Books bump.
George R.R. Martin. Yeah, I hear he's doing a lot better now after we started talking about him. So that's pretty nice. Talking about one of his short stories on Tough. I'm Nate, of course. And Ben, you're the one who picked this, and you know a lot more about Tough than I do. This is my first exposure to it.
I'm realizing I'm something of a George R.R. Martin scholar. I think I've read everything he's written except I haven't read all of the Wild Cards stuff, only some of it, because it just goes on forever, and there's a new one every 6 months. It feels like.
Is there really?
He is always putting out.
I haven't even finished the first book. Now, he doesn't write all those. I mean,
no, he doesn't write all of them, but
he's
got at least one story. He edits them, or he was editing them. I don't know if he still is.
I'm sure he is, knowing him. Knowing him, he's doing everything except writing Game of Thrones. And you know what? The more I think about it, if I were in his position, I would also just be like, you know what? I'm going to go on vacation for 3 weeks on a beach. I'm just going to go hang out with my wife on a beach, and if that makes you mad, I'll send you pictures of me on a beach, possibly in a Speedo, flipping you off.
Well, they've got that Jon Snow series coming out, so...
What?
Yeah, there's a new... HBO just announced there's a new Jon Snow series in development with Kit Harington set to reprise the role.
That is impressive, because they haven't even released the new Targaryen spin-off, so, you would think that they would want to wait until that drops to see if anyone cares, which they haven't since the end of the series.
I'm a bookman. I'm not a TV man, so I don't know what in development necessarily means.
TV man sounds like some sort of disease or someone who studies a disease that's really bad.
That's a TB man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't know. All I know is that I guess Kit Harington has expressed interest in reprising the role. Maybe they got a contract with him if they decide to go forward. I'd imagine they'd have to... I don't know if they're doing a pilot or if they're just ordering 10 episodes without saying it, but I have no idea where it would go. I guess it would be Jon Snow's adventures on the Wall after the...
Yeah, he goes up north after the end of Game of Thrones,
yeah,
I guess. And he hangs out in the Arctic tundra, which... Theoretically,
all the White Walkers are gone, right? So,
yeah.
What's he guarding against?
Well,
just wildlings?
Is he even on the Wall? I thought that they were just going and resettling up beyond the Wall.
Oh,
which always felt like okay, I haven't read Game of Thrones.
It doesn't go that far, so.
Well, what I was gonna say is I've seen maps of the far off lands, and you know what? That kind of thing sounds more interesting when you don't explore it. You let me imagine what kind of strange, fanciful stuff is out far beyond the reaches of the known world. So that's my take on it. I don't care about Game of Thrones in TV form anymore.
It's that meme. Friendship with Game of Thrones over. Tough Voyaging is new best friend. So I've introduced you to Tough, George R.R. Martin's little-known, recurring sci-fi short story character.
Yeah, there's a lot of these.
There is. I first encountered Tough. This is obviously, these were written way before my time, but I first encountered it in Dream Songs, which is kind of like a collection of George R.R. Martin short stories from various points in his career.
I was supposed to purchase that so I could read Sand Kings, and then I just found a leaked copy online, and I just stole this. We gave him exposure, I guess. We paid him an exposure. Yeah. But I did go ahead. I purchased this, and that it's worth a solid $8, which is what I paid for it, and I enjoyed it.
It's pretty good if you like old school sci-fi. It does have that old feel of what space would be like, and it's very little bit cowboys in space, but it's not quite that bad. But Tough is very non-traditional sci-fi hero. He's not the most likable guy in the world. He's kind of abrasive, but he always gets the job done.
He kind of comes off as almost a gentleman. That's not true. He talks to his cat and openly insults people. God, Even at this point, these guys are just a bunch of morons. But, I mean, they are morons, number one. And number two, he doesn't seem like emotive, maybe is the word. He's really reserved. He's really laid back. He's willing to just take his time to solve the problem, even as people die in droves around him.
Tough is one of my favorite George R.R. Martin characters. And I'm obviously like one of the only people in the world that feels this way because I think the Tough Voyaging book did okay, but it only did okay, and it only got reprinted after the success of the televised Game of Thrones, when people were just demanding more George R.R. Martin stuff, and he obviously didn't have Winds of Winter, so they just went through his back catalog and republished everything he'd ever done. And that's how Tough Voyaging came to be. And I was really grateful for it. I was probably the only person looking forward to Tough Voyaging, because I've only had access to a few Tough stories up until that point, and I wanted to read the canon, you know? But yeah, Tough is a guy who acquires a spaceship, which is like the last of the fabled ecological engineering spaceships.
It's fucking huge. It's gigantic.
George R.R. Martin wrote this at a time when the environmental movement and the science of ecology was really starting to come into like broader mainstream focus. And he wanted to do something with ecology. And so he came up with Tough, who has this ship from an ecological engineering division. They were like these old terraforming geniuses who kind of like became lost technology. There was a war or something. And he's got one of their ships. And within that ship, there's like a gene bank of every known animal, plant, whatever they've encountered. And using this ship, he can fix environmental problems on any world in the galaxy. But first he has to understand the problem and do a proper analysis and figure out the complexities of the ecology. And
I'm guessing, just based on this story, that doesn't always happen. He doesn't always get to understand.
The drama of the story revolves around nobody wanting to do things Tough's way. Tough always wants to like take his time, do it right, and he doesn't really care to explain his reasoning behind that to people. So the drama is always generated by idiots screwing up their environment and Tough having to deal with them in a way that usually ends in them getting their comeuppance, and he fixes the environment while he's there. So I selected for you, Nate, as your first exposure to Tough. I think this might have been my first exposure to Tough as well. And it is one of the best Tough stories. Is it called Guardians or Guardians?
It is called Guardians. And it's not who you think, Ben.
I kind of saw the twist coming a mile away, but
I didn't get it 100% correctly, but I was pretty close.
Yeah, I think I figured it out only because I know George R.R. Martin and I know how he describes food. And there was just something a little different about this description. So I knew where he was going with this. But you have read it more recently than I have. I read
it today.
Yeah.
I started and finished it today.
I have been busy reading for various other projects, which will possibly come the week after this release. So that'll be fun for the audience, or at least two of them.
Yeah, it'll be fun for a couple people and also me. It sounds like maybe you. We'll see.
Maybe me. We'll see.
Yeah, it sounds like you're not hating it. So that's good.
Yes. So let's jump into the story. You paint a picture for me of Tough.
So Tough, according to this illustration that I just looked up, that is the cover of a magazine of the original publication, I believe. He looks like Dr. Evil. He's bald. He's wearing
like
a gray suit.
Dr. Evil.
He does look larger.
Tough is like 6 foot tall, 400 pounds.
So they don't tell you what he looks like in the book, but he starts out, he's at like a convention. It's the 6th Planetary Ecological Convention or whatever. And he's like he goes to like a pie vendor, and he's like, "Hey, can I get a pie?" Vendor gives him a pie. Tough scarfs it down in a few bites, and the vendor's like, "Boy, you are a big one." So I didn't know how large of a dude Tough was. I didn't even know if he was human at first. I figured maybe he was like an 8 or 9 foot tall humanoid.
I didn't even know if he was human or some sort of pie man, you know? No,
He was
Tough as human.
for all I knew, he was like an 8 foot tall humanoid giant man.
Are there intelligent aliens in this one?
I mean, there spoilers, yes, but
Okay.
but
Well, no, I mean, like, are there other sentient races that attend the convention?
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, George R.R. Martin had his own little like sci-fi universe. I don't know if it ever got a proper name, but
Tough of verse. The Tough cinematic universe once he finally gets the projects off the ground.
He had like recurring races and planets and stuff. If you read a lot of his sci-fi.
As far as I knew, and I could be wrong, I think everyone was humans? Question mark?
That's what I don't remember Tough necessarily being set in the larger Martin-verse, but that doesn't mean it wasn't. It very well could be. George, if you're listening to this, I want you to halt everything you're doing on Winds of Winter. More Tough. We got to double down on Tough. I think that's what HBO is really... They don't know they want it yet, but we need a Tough series.
I mean, you could do this as a series. It's built for a Star Trek-like, and I mean like more original or TNG. You have an episode, you go to a planet, there's a problem, you figure out the problem, there's some drama in between, and in the end, you solve the problem.
Is Vincent D'Onofrio available to play Tough? We should check on this. I'll check on this for you, George. I'll send him a tweet.
That'd be much appreciated.
So, yes, that's Tough. He's attending a convention. He's eating pies.
Yeah, it sounds like also there used to be like a great human empire.
Yes.
And it sounds like not so much anymore. Like, it sounds like you're right. There's some sort of great war. All the giant ecological ships, except for this one, were destroyed. And... here we are. We're in kind of the post-human empire.
Yeah, I mean,
like
there's still
Rome almost.
Yeah, it's more like that. And I think that's taking a bit of inspiration from Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. If do a little podcast plug here, if you want to learn more about Foundation without reading Foundation, check out Selden Crisis. That is my favorite Foundation podcast. But in Foundation, there is a huge human empire that spans many galaxies, and it is destined to collapse. And when it does, it fractures into various states like Rome did into Europe, and we're kind of left with that. They're in the space of kind of rebuilding back up towards what they were. But yeah, I think medieval Europe looking back with wonder on these Romans who built these aqueducts and roads and all this stuff. And the ecological engineering is the lost cement technology.
So I do have a question for you about Tough, but I can save it for the end. Just try and remind
If you think it's relevant to what people need to know about Tough, we can do it now.
Well, I think it's relevant to Tough, but I don't want to get too far off of the summary. Unless,
okay.
I mean...
keep going then.
Okay, so he's at this convention. Nothing really interests him, although he's wolfing down pies left and right. And he's like, "Hey, so 6 planetary convention, only 5 planets. What's up with that? Tell me while I eat another 2 of your pies." And turns out there are troubles on, I think it's called Namor,
probably
Namor, whatever.
Because Namor, Prince of the Sea or whatever.
Oh, is that? That's
a
thing?
Marvel character.
Oh. Any relation to Aquaman?
He is almost a direct ripoff of Aquaman, yes.
Okay. I also need to mention, Tough really loves cats. He's got a bunch of cats, more Dr. Evil.
He likes cats. He dislikes people who are mean to cats. He likes cats because they are independent, they're quiet, and
They
they
don't
are
need no man.
mysterious. He is something of a cat himself, but not in a weird furry way.
Yeah, he's hairless, so petting him would be like real weird.
He has a
Just
rough
be
tongue.
real uncomfortable for everyone involved. So he goes to Namor, which apparently has some sort of sea monster infestation. So I was thinking like Godzilla Man or something, but
What? Godzilla Man?
yeah, giant Godzilla monsters.
Oh, okay.
Ben,
I mean,
but that's not the case. What is the case is even more like terrifying and horrible.
okay.
So he arrives in orbit. He just chills out for a bit. Just waits for them to contact him because that's his style, Ben.
That is his style. He is a cat, but not
And
in a
so
weird
they're
furry
like,
way.
Hey, we've got several ships locked on. Only it's just one ship, and they're like, you need to state your business in your home world, or we're gonna get you. And they threaten him a bit, and he it's like one ship that's like not even close to the size. Like he's the Death Star, and that's an X-wing. He's the Death Star, and that's a tiny ant on the ground. Like
He's doing the guy's
laughable.
trying to. The guy's trying to do the Poe General Hux thing where he insults his mother or something.
It's a laughable thing that they would threaten him like, you need to answer us or we'll blow you out of the sky.
Did George R.R. Martin predict Star Wars Episode 8? No.
Yeah, I was like, 11?
11?
No, that's not right.
How many fucking Star Wars are there?
There are
No.
9, but then there's a bunch of spin-offs.
It was 8. I'm thinking, anyway, go on.
Yeah, it was 8. Yeah, you're right. So, yeah, he introduces himself and his giant ship, and they threaten him and insult him, and they call his mother a whore, and then he's like, I can help you, like with your sea monster infestation. Here, you got a problem here. I've got a giant ship built for solving ecological problems.
And I accept MasterCard, Visa, and personal checks.
He does say, I'll save your planet for 3 million credits. And they're like, 3 million credits?
I could
We'll
buy a
give
better
you-"
planet for that.
Yeah. It's like, we'll do it for 2. It's like, God, fine, I'll do it for 2.
Yeah, and they are very quick to accept that he could use his godlike powers to fix their system. And that's the other weird thing is like nobody knows how to do ecological engineering, but everybody's heard of the fabled ecological engineers.
Yeah, it's like Rome. It's like if
Rome.
Caesar were walking around in post-Rome Europe.
Yeah, just
And they'd be like-
seasoning food with olive oil and
Having triumphs.
irrigating crops right and left.
Yeah, that would... Why haven't we written this, Ben?
What have we written? What? Rome? I feel like there maybe a few people have beaten us to the punch.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But yeah, so he's like... He negotiates this deal. He gets a Guardian, one of the pilots, to be his liaison between himself and the planet. And they're going to give him all the data they have on the sea monsters that are plaguing them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's going to come up with a solution. So, couple facts here. They're not native to this planet. They came here 100 years ago. It's mostly ocean. There's like one... And you're going to have to edit out a lot of my likes, Ben. There's one large island. And then there's just thousands of tiny islands dotted throughout. And that's all there is in the way of landmass. They've been here for 100 years. They've set up a colony. They found no other intelligent life. And they had to clear out this thing called the Man-O-War, which is a cross between a Earth Man-O-War, I guess, and a jellyfish?
Which is kind of a man of war.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big jellyfish.
Big jellyfish,
Big
right?
jellyfish. Yeah.
They were clogging up all the shallow water where all the fish are, and they need to get rid of them. They were a bit of a nuisance. And when they cleared them out, they also found these delicious, savory mud pots. You'd think that they would call them something else if you were going to market, like, hey, you wanna buy a mud pot? Like, no, that sounds fucking gross.
Hey, Guy Fieri here. As host of TV's Ultimate Recipe Showdown, I see great home cooks face off every week. We looked at thousands of recipes, and now the
Mud pots?
inspired by our champions are all at Fridays.
Yeah, it looks like an upside down bucket or something.
Yeah, and it's got like little tentacles that they usually remove prior to you eating them.
Yeah.
You crack them open, you pour melted butter. It's basically a sort of immobile lobster thing, is how I imagined it. But it looks like a bucket.
It's like a bucket-shaped clam with a,
And you eat it like a lobster. You crack it open,
Yeah.
you butter that sumbitch up, and you just go to town. Just
Yep.
So then...
But fortunately, so this is kind of foreshadowing, but George R.R. Martin cleverly thought that maybe the local cuisine would be relevant, but he hid that amidst all the pies.
Delicious, delicious pies. And mushrooms. Tough has a thing for mushrooms.
Yeah. So yeah. They've got the mud pots. That's like their claim to fame. That's the best thing you can eat there.
The best mud pot this side of the Milky Way galaxy. And also the only.
That does not sound good. Yeah, you're
right.
No,
it doesn't.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Hey, you want to go hop over to Namor and get some mud pots? You don't call me anymore. I'm out.
Yeah, it's like how we gotta rename garbage whitefish to Chilean sea bass. It's the Chilean sea bass of space.
Delicious. Yeah.
Chilean sea mud pot.
Now you're talking. Maybe drop the mud. Chilean sea pot.
Chilean sea pot.
Now you don't know if it's food or drugs, but you're gonna go and find out. Speaking of food or drugs, is there a thing like why does Tough eat? He only eats like mushrooms and veggies.
He's a vegetarian.
Okay, he straight up told. I forgot her name. Kefira K?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, he straight up tells her, we don't eat meat on this ship.
Yeah. He thinks it's gross.
Is there a specific reason for that, or is he vegetarian? I guess he's vegetarian.
He thinks it's gross. For whatever reason, he just thinks eating flesh is gross. And I think that's another aspect of George R.R. Martin kind of wanting to tap into this emerging... And again, I think this was written in like the 60s, 70s. This emerging ecological movement where people were starting to think about animal rights, and
they weren't eating steak at every dinner.
Well, like people were starting to question the morality of eating all meat, but certainly things like veal. And I think a good analogy for this one might be the boiling of lobsters alive to have a flavorless vehicle to put butter in your mouth.
Yeah. Hey. We circled back around to mud pots.
Yeah, so
that's basically what they are on this planet. But they're so good, Ben.
They're so damn good.
They're so fucking delicious.
I'm gonna take an aggressive stance here. I'm gonna call it another podcast, Unchefed. If somebody can explain to me what the fascination with lobster is, it tastes like nothing.
I think it was a marketing ploy because it used to be like not cool. Like everyone knew it was a bug that you got out of the ocean.
Ocean floor spiders.
Yeah, and it used to be seen as like gross, and
it is gross.
And now it's like, oh, it's a delicacy because it just transports all the butter into your mouth. You know, you could just eat a stick of butter. If that's all you want, we can melt some butter. You can drink it.
I'm with Tough. Yeah, I think these people are assholes.
Oh, no, I think these people are horrible assholes. He's like, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to do it for real cheap. 2 million credits for a planet? Doing it real cheap. And they're like, well, you're an ugly, bald-headed son of a bitch, and I hate you, and I'll begrudgingly pay you this money in exchange for saving our planet from total ecological disaster. But just know, even after you do it, I'm going to send you cards every year around Christmas, just me flipping you off and telling you to go to hell. Like, they're just unlikable.
I'm going to send you a
dicks.
card every Christmas that says Happy Holidays in my passive-aggressive ploy to ruin your day. So, yes. So, I missed the part. So, you said they got rid of the Man-O-War, they found the mud pots, but then what happened?
Yeah, so then some ships started mysteriously disappearing. But they finally got footage because they couldn't find any trace of those ships. But there are people who were filming for the news on board one of these ships, and suddenly a tentacle emerges from the ship, and then other tentacles, and suddenly everyone's running and screaming. Things are just slaughtering the inhabitants of the ship, pulling the ship under, killing everyone. These things are also, like, horrifying. They've got teeth on the tentacles, and they've got eyes that can see above the surface, so they know what they're grabbing at. They know what to hit, and they can do stuff like expel water from the tentacles to shoot stuff down or shoot people down, or they could even fill up the craft with water to more easily drag it down to the depths. And it's terrifying, Ben.
That is terrifying. It's weird that you didn't
Obviously.
see that before now.
Yeah, it is weird, because they've been here for 100 years, they never found that. And their first hypothesis, which they actually had already discarded prior to Tough coming, was there was something deep down in the ocean, and some sort of catastrophe, some sort of climate change, as it were, happened down there and drove these things to the surface where they're now killing us. But these things are basically, they're like filled with air, and they couldn't survive deep down at those pressures. They would be compressed. Basically, there'd be a balloon that just has too much pressure on it, they'd pop.
Also, the writers decided that was too similar to the plot of Godzilla. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. They're like, well, shit. There's tons of them now. It's not just one. It's like a throng of them. It's an entire new ecosystem of sea monsters. But you know what? They're like, that's cool. That's fine. We've got airships. We've got planes. We can just drop bombs and poison on them from the sky. We're safe. But that's where they're wrong, Ben.
how did that go for them?
There are floating monsters. They float right out of the sea, and they grab onto blimps and planes, and they're full of helium. So when you shoot it, it explodes in a fireball.
It's really weird that we didn't see those before.
Yeah, and they're somewhat intelligent because they'll hide in cloud banks and stuff. So if you fly into some clouds, boom, horrible space monster of some kind.
Every cloud is a horrible space monster. Are you listening, chemtrail people?
You are right! Question mark. But yeah, so now we've got sea monsters, and we've got sky monsters, and the military is losing. They've lost so many airships, and I wanted to say ocean ships, but I guess just
ships, yeah.
They've lost so many airships and other ships.
Planes and boats.
Planes and boats. Planes, trains, and plantains.
Well, thankfully we live on the land, and there's no way there can ever be a land monster.
Yes. Thankfully, they're living on the land, and there's... Wait, hold on. Next slide. Oh dear. Oh, God. So, we might have jumped to some conclusions, Ben, about how there can't be any land monsters. So this is embarrassing. I regret to inform you, we've lost contact with several islands, and when we made the journey out there to see what was up, we kinda sorta saw some horrible... I hesitate to say Lovecraftian shit, because that gives them too much credit, but some terrifying, I'm gonna pee myself and run screaming type of shit. Because...
Okay. Get me the
There's
guy
a-
who was in contact with the bald man. What the fuck is he doing up there? I paid
Well-
him $2 million of my hard-earned credits, and he's just spending it on what? Pies?
Well, first of all, they didn't pay him in advance, which was it's a bad idea. They should have paid him in advance. But he's been studying stuff, like, you know, those horrifying abominations that they have limbs now. They could just crawl out of the ocean and come get you.
Yeah, you'll have to be more specific. They're all horrifying abominations.
Yeah, they're horrifying tentacle abominations that also have legs now and can run onto land and get you.
God damn it. Junji Ito's behind this, isn't he?
Dude, he could be. I mean, shit. This is straight out of some Junji Ito.
This is the plot of Gyo.
Yeah. Oh. Except it doesn't... They're not powered by their own farts or whatever was the thing there.
Decompositional gases.
I don't see a difference between those two things.
It's an important difference to the person who's still alive.
So yeah, Tough is up there. He's just studying things. He's just analyzing things and running simulations like a dick.
Listen, you fat egghead. I got people dying down here, probably.
Yeah.
On ships, planes, and automobiles. Even the land is not safe, and that's where my stuff is. I need you to get a move on this ecology, bucko.
But he keeps saying it's a process. It takes time. Can't rush this sort of thing. He even tells a story like there once was this planet. Everything was ideal except there were these giant fucking horrifying insects that would blot out the sun in large numbers and land on people. They were harmless, but I wouldn't live there. But anyway, they called in an ecologist, or a wannabe ecologist, to come deal with the problem. And so he decided to release even bigger insects for some reason, which killed the native insects. But now you've got even larger truck-sized insects, and also the previous insects were there to keep the local fungal population in check, and it just grew out of control. Now everything's worse than it was before, so you can't rush these things, or else I'm going to end up giving you an even larger jellyfish monster.
Look, your thinly veiled analogies for the cane toad problem in Australia are not going to work on me, Tough. I need solutions. Give me my own sea monster.
That sounds like a really bad idea.
That sounds like an idea that a local government came up with. Now make it happen, you contractor.
So he is like, yeah, you could probably kill me and then figure out how to use this ship in a couple of years, but you don't got years. By your own admission, this is getting worse. These things are breeding out of control, and now they're coming up on the land, and you'll probably be wiped out by the time you figure out how to use my ship, so you need to cool your tits, lady. But she doesn't.
But she does.
She
does
doesn't.
not cool her tits.
No.
In fact, they warm substantially.
I was going to say that they become laser guns, but she does pull out a laser gun, and she's like, you know what? I won't shoot you. I'll just shoot your cats. And Tough's like, fine. I'll do what you ask. It's not going to work, and you're dumb, but I'll do what you ask. So he clones a bunch of animals from all over the galaxy or the universe. I don't know which one. He's got a whole bunch of various different sea monsters, and he explains it as a scattershot approach because I don't know what's going to work because you didn't give me enough time to run the simulations, you dolt. But here you go. We're going to just throw a bunch of different sea monsters of varying sizes, some big, some small. Some of them will be like, they hide in the clouds, and there's basically like a spider web in the clouds that are made of razors. So they pop the monsters up there. And we're also going to release a bunch of smaller, more vicious creatures that will maybe go after the babies of these sea monsters. And maybe cut down their population that way. We're hitting them from all possible angles.
Now that's what I'm talking about. I love a scattershot approach to environmentalism.
Yeah. Perfect. It works really well, too, initially.
I mean, we definitely know we're going to hit the target.
Yeah. We're going to obliterate the target, and hopefully not the people standing around and behind the target, but like,
we can make more people.
You gotta crack a few islands to make an omelet, right?
Absolutely.
Initial reports are like, wow, all these monsters you've unleashed on our planet just tearing through the local sea monster population. We've got great white sharks and all sorts of... We got various types of kraken.
Yeah, he mixes in a bunch of
planets.
space monsters, but also like earth monsters.
Yeah. He mixes in... He's got just a fine blend of fuck your monster problem up. But then the monsters start getting a little tougher. Suddenly their skin's a little thicker. Suddenly they've got even larger sea monsters that eat the krakens. And now they're wiping out islands at an accelerated pace. And what's up with that? Why are all the contingencies that we have failing one after the other? I think it's time to light the Halo rings and wipe out all life. Good game.
Yep.
Oh, wait, no, that didn't happen. That last.
I forget how many rounds of this they go through of him like creating sea monsters to counter the sea monsters.
One round.
Just one.
He
Okay.
keeps it succinct. He throws all the monsters all at once, and then they fail. Like they succeed, and then they fail, and then the girl is like, "What? You fucked up, Tough. Why are you causing all these problems to be worse?" It's like, God damn it.
Why would you suggest we put all these sea monsters in the ocean, Tough?
And I actually thought that it was going to end out worse because the sea monsters are now the dominant species and they make everything worse. But no, I should specify. Tough sea monsters are now the dominant species. But in fact, no, it just makes the native sea monsters much, much worse.
Yeah. All the while, Tough starts like working on this weird cat project.
Yeah, apparently cats have some low-level psionic power, just like humans in the StarCraft universe, Ben. Let's not talk about that. Actually, let's just move on. Pretend like I never said anything. But yeah, cats have some psionic power, and turns out a long time ago, when the humans got into some great big war, there were all kinds of really powerful psionic aliens out there that either we were using as weapons or were our enemies. I could not tell. I kind of figure the former, but whatever. So they had to breed cats to have even more psionic power. And so we have psychic cats that he has the genetic template for in his seed ship. And
now, how on earth could a psychic cat solve this problem?
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to get all of your people together, your leaders. You're going to meet me at the Grand Council chamber, and I'll just show up whenever. I don't respect you guys, so...
You are going to have a pie buffet?
Yeah, there better be pies there.
My rider is weirdly specific.
I want you to get me a pyramid made of pies, and I want you to have a bowl of M&Ms, but only the blue, the red, and there better be a teal. If there's not teal M&Ms, you better be making them.
I will send you the instructions for the exact shade of teal dye I require my M&Ms to be coated in, sir.
And he's like, my secret weapon is this baby kitten. Don't question it, you idiot. So yeah, he shows up at the council chamber very late.
He's got a cat in one hand, he's got a mud pot in the other.
Yeah, and they're like, I think they make the lead guy makes a remark like, huh, I thought you were bringing me a solution to the problem. Instead, you brought us dinner. Everyone laugh. I'm a funny guy. We're all gonna die from horrible creatures from the depths of the ocean. Let's keep insulting this guy who might be the only chance we have at salvation.
He's as fat as he is bald, sir.
So, yeah, it turns out these mud pots are sentient, Ben. How could that be, you ask? When they have no sensory input of any kind, the only thing they have are brains about as large as humans, which
has to be most of what you're eating.
Yeah, that's why I was like, ew? Do you just, scoop that out? Or, what?
No, that's what they eat. That's the meat. They're just brains and tentacles.
Yeah, and they remove the tentacles.
Yeah, they're eating the brain.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, my note there was like, I don't know how I feel about eating that, guys. I think maybe
now you're starting to warm up to Tufts vegetarianism.
Yeah. I think we find some... Tough, can you just clone me some bread and some butter and I'll just...
Clone me some bread? Tough, can you give me your best sourdough starter? I find myself in need of sustenance. Oh, God. Okay. So, yeah, they're sentient, and they disobey the laws that most human science considers necessary for sentience, which is sensory input, some sort of manipulation appendage to make tools, and basically we can only conceive of intelligence.
The ability to communicate, too. The mud pots, they start out life a little closer to the surface of the water, and then they mature, they sink to the bottom, and then they root down there and just live inside of a mud bank for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and that's their life.
Yeah, but what
from
tough?
Our perspective.
Yeah, from our perspective, and so there's no way that could be intelligent, because what would the purpose of intelligence be? What would the evolutionary benefit be? But in actuality, they are some kind of psionic, I believe, and they
all communicate with each other.
Yeah, they engage in a shared dreaming,
some sort of psionic web. Yeah,
and they can use their psionic shared dream to construct things in the actual world. And so they were coming up with innovative solutions to the problem of an invasive species of brain-eating monkeys.
Yeah. So it took so long because they're slow to react. At first they thought, okay, it's just a weird land species that evolved out there. They didn't know it was a spacefaring species. So they were like, okay, a new land animal has evolved. And the other thing was, if you eat one of them, all of them feel it.
Yeah,
so
you're
you're eating their brains, everyone's feeling that brain being eaten.
You're taking a node out of the network, and they can feel the pain of each mud pot dying. I assume they wouldn't feel the actual chewing of the brain, right?
I hope
they're dead by that point.
Yeah, I think they probably just feel the, throwing it into boiling water. I'm assuming they probably kill it the way they kill a lobster, but yeah, they feel it, and usually, like he said, that they live for thousands of years, not hundreds of years, and even when they die, their memories live on in the greater collective, so they have some form of immortality, which is nice. Good for them. I'm jealous. And
it assuages your guilt a little, I guess.
Not if your last memory is having your brain being horribly eaten, and that's now lives on in the greater collective. But they're like, okay, you know what? This worked before. We're going to deploy the Man-O-Wars, which we call Guardians. I guess we say roll credits and we do a ding.
We should also mention that this is all being relayed through a psychic cat acting as medium.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, they were the dominant species on the planet because back in prehistoric times, or whatever you want to call it, they were able to release Man-O-Wars to protect themselves. The Guardians successfully fended the things off, but this new land animal cleared them out like they were nothing, so now it's time to get some sea monsters. And now that you have airplanes, we're going to get air monsters. And you know what? You're kind of really pissing us off. You're over there on your fancy land. We're going to send some land monsters up. Fuck you. Oh, you're going to release great white sharks and krakens? We're going to get bigger sea monsters, asshole. Let's go. But they sensed the cat walking among them, which must have been really weird. And Tough was able to talk to them through the cat, and they learned about there being spacefaring creatures, and they're willing to negotiate, it sounds like, with the land animals. Their biggest thing is, please stop eating us. We don't need your land. Stop eating us.
And that first city council member is like, unacceptable. Everybody just
unacceptable, you're delicious.
Right guys, and everybody's kind of like, no. Like, one guy's gagging.
Yeah, they're gagging him. They're dragging him out to the ocean. They're like, here you go. I don't know how the arrangement will work, because I can imagine, like, there's going to be a black market on mud pots, and then the mud pots are just going to be like, you know what? Fuck you.
Well, I think the Guardians would work against a black market. If you don't have, like, the full weight of the military protecting you from the mud pots, they can pretty easily counter you.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. So, yeah, and then at the end, Tough gives them all psychic cats, and he's like, yeah, you owe me another $2 million. And they're like, what? That's absurd. And he's like,
sea monsters not included, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, here's my itemized list on all that bullshit you had me make that then went to waste. And they're like, well, we don't have that kind of money. So you can wait in orbit forever for 100 years. You're not going to get 4 million credits. And he's like, well, let me show you this video of this other planet that also had an ecologist that they tried to screw over. And, like, what happened to that planet? It's very informative, very tastefully done. It's
it was
a nice
called
reenactment.
Mars. It used to be a beautiful blue-green paradise. And then they pissed me off.
And the story ends with, they obviously paid him.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, you're not going to try to cheat the guy who has godlike powers and his city in orbit and his giant moon-sized spaceship that can release death upon you from the skies.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, I could just blight your entire planet and then build a better one over here. I am a god to you people.
Yeah.
And I'll require
I'll
a tithe.
I'll transport the mud pots to a different planet that's even better. And your planet is going to be called Toxic Shithole from now on.
I'll take the mud pots to another planet and I'll start a crypto farm using their shared dream as processing power.
Oh my god.
Yeah, fortunately George R.R. Martin couldn't have conceived of crypto farms in his
Thank God.
Futuristic hellscape.
So that was Guardians.
That was Guardians. So I gotta ask, how do you like it? This is your first Tough, right? I don't think I ever made you read
this
any of these.
This is my first Tough. I didn't even know Tough was a thing until
it's definitely
mentioned it a few days ago.
Not as popular as Wild Cards, or certainly not as popular as A Song of Ice and Fire, or even Fever Dream, or the Armageddon Rag, or
I've never heard of most of these things, but
Dying of the Light. These are all George R.R. Martin things.
Well, I know the George R.R. Martin things, Ben. I figured that out. It's very obvious.
Tough is a relatively obscure bit. I mean, it's not. You could probably still get Tough Voyaging in your Barnes and Noble. It's not like this lost media.
Yeah, they probably
piece,
reprinted it all, like you said, after he became
they
really
did reprint
popular. I think after we talked about him last year, right?
I feel like they reprinted it around 2010 because I pre-ordered it. I actually remember this.
Reprinted it around 2010. That was when we first started the podcast, the lost episodes.
Lost episodes. Yes. We were young. You were still in college.
First of all, if you said there were tentacled sea monsters out there, and now there are tentacled air monsters, and now they're coming up on land with like legs and shit, I'm booking the next spaceship the fuck off of that planet.
What if you're heavily invested in this planet?
I'm writing it off.
Writing it off. What if you sunk your whole life savings into this planet?
I'm gonna say I'm still out because tentacled sea monsters with legs. Like, that's horrifying. I'm going to run and scream and piss myself all at the same time, and like maybe carry some of those delicious mud pots with me.
Maybe I could start a mud pot farm on another planet. Recoup my losses. It is funny that nobody tried that. Yeah. What do you think of the concept of Tough as an ecological engineer and this weird...
So that's... I had a question.
Okay.
I read the prologue because I was like, maybe this will be important. It's called The Plague Star, and it's about a guy who isn't tough and his wife who also isn't tough. And they go to a planet full of... They called it a slave species, or two different slave species, that they were once part of some... used as foot soldiers in an empire, and the masters were killed thousands of years ago, but the slave species are like, well, they're going to come back and use us someday. It's going to be glorious, but they don't realize, like, all their masters are dead. And the wife was like, we could sell stuff to these idiots, like medicine and stuff. It's going to be great. And apparently there's a star in the sky that just gradually burns brighter and brighter until you can, like, see it during the day. And it just gives you all the plague. Just all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife died, and he has a plague that's different from his wife's. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to die, and it's all her fault. I spat on her grave. He literally spits on her grave. And I assume that the plague star is the Ark.
Yeah, I think so.
What does that have to do with anything? Maybe it's a prologue to The Plague Star, which was a short story at the beginning of the book that I did not get a chance to read. Which I read a brief summary, said it was how Tough gets in the first place.
Yeah. If you're really curious about that, I'd suggest reading more of the book.
I am curious about
I don't know what order the stories were published in originally, but I do know he put them kind of chronologically from Tough's perspective in order in the book, in the Tough Voyaging book. So yeah, I'd recommend that. Like, there is a reason that Tough is probably one of the lesser known characters of George R.R. Martin. It's not like, this isn't mind blowing stuff. It is very pulpy. I think Guardians is among the best stories featuring Tough. Like, how he gets the ship, I do remember that one a little bit, but I don't think that was written. I don't think that was the first Tough story. I think that was to, like, fill in his backstory after he got some interest in the magazines he was published in. It was good. It's sort of like in that Dune camp of old sci-fi where, I know I keep repeating this, but people were starting to think about planets as systems unto themselves and really starting to understand the complexities of what living out among the stars would look like, how you would need to sort of terraform things. And
you would need a big, fat, bald man to save you.
Well, you would need somebody who's capable of seeing the bigger picture. And I think it's a good way of, like, Tough isn't a likable character, but he is a character that kind of commands respect. He's always the smartest guy in the room, and though he may be unpleasant, it's very easy to see the allegory we're going for in the politicians who refuse to listen to Tough's inconvenient truth.
Huh. Where have I heard that before?
and refuse to take his perhaps expensive recommendations that may kill a thriving local industry that is based on cruelty to thinking, feeling beings.
It's just so much easier to burn coal. Is there any way I can still burn my coal and you could save the planet?
No.
But, like, what if I'm heavily invested in coal and, I don't know, I'm some sort of guy who has the power to stop people from doing anything with coal? Is there...
Yeah, well, there is, but it's going to cost you $2 million extra in the long run. You can use all the coal there is, but you're going to have to then invest in sucking all that carbon back out of the atmosphere, and I'm not going to do that for free. So.
Well, I have a clever exit strategy where I'm really old and I'll just be dead by then. So, I think I'm going to go with this.
Touché, sir.
My grandchildren are fucked, but like, there's so much.
I didn't like them anyway. I don't understand Fortnite.
Yeah. Their fucking TikToks and YouTubes and
Their
tubers.
TikToks and their clouds, both sound and otherwise.
Your QB.
Yeah. I don't know. Would you read another Tough if I recommended it, or do you have any desire to read Tough on your own?
I have a desire to read The Plague Star on my own, and I'd be willing to read other Tough, depending on how that is and on your recommendation. So
yeah, there's one or two more I think are really worth a read, and I think it's a little sad that this kind of went unnoticed. And I actually think this is like, I don't know, this is my selfish opinion. I think this is a better candidate for. I would rather have a Tough show than a Jon Snow show. And a Targaryen show. And
but you need to learn about what Jon Snow does up in the north.
Probably not much. It's probably like the Obi-Wan Kenobi show where all of Jon Snow's like greatest. He didn't actually just become a boring old guy who sat in the desert for 50 years. He was actually fighting Darth Vader and Darth Maul, and he was having all these crazy space adventures. And yeah, no, his life wasn't a pathetic mess. But yeah, that's kind of my thing. I think the world could really use another Star Trek
Tough
that is actually Star Trek, not whatever they're doing.
I'm actually thinking of checking out the Orville at this point, Ben.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything but clips of the other Star Trek, but it's like it looks like it's generic space adventure show, which is fine, but why are you're calling it Star Trek just to sell it? And I don't like that.
I do agree that if you did like a Star Trek The Next Generation now, it would be unbearably cheesy.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Trek The Next Generation was almost unbearably cheesy when it aired. Tough kind of has the right amount of cynicism and snark that the 20s demand of us.
Well, all you need to do is you put Tough in there, and then you put like two other characters who are opposite ends of the spectrum who could voice their terrible opinion that Tough can then figure through.
The thing I think sci-fi TV has kind of lost, that, science fiction writing is still doing. If you read the magazines today, people are still coming out with good stuff. But TV has kind of lost the ability to use an imagined science fiction scenario to talk about a real world problem.
Well, that's because I need to see the laser shoots. Pew, pew, pew.
No, that's not even what I'm talking about. Like with Picard, like is literally dealing with, like, they literally go back into the past and have to deal with ice. And it's like,
what?
You should, that's not how you use sci-fi. You use sci-fi to go to a planet that has a problem similar to the problem we're dealing with.
Yes. Aliens are just, they're just humans, but a part of the human. Like,
everybody thinks people are stupid now. Everybody thinks their audience is stupid and that they won't understand that when Tough goes and he's talking about the Guardians and the ever escalating thing of like, well, I have a problem with this bug, so I'm going to bring in this frog to kill the bug, and then I'm going to bring in a bird to kill the frog. And
whoa. Are you trying to tell me there are real world lessons and implications here?
Yeah, it's crazy.
What?
I mean, there might be. I don't know. How could we ever know?
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, that's too subtle for my stupid brain. I don't know anything about the world and anything that happens. I need a Hollywood screenwriter to tell me what I should believe.
Okay, well, don't worry. We've got those two idiots who wrote Star Trek Into Darkness and the two idiots who wrote The Game of Thrones, and we're going to get them all in a room, and they're going to tell you.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I look back on Tough fondly. I guess I got a soft spot for it. So I'm glad you liked it. I don't know if you still, do you want to rate this according to our patented words about books rubric?
I'll muse on it a little more before I do that.
Okay.
I think like 20 out of 20 for word choice.
Okay.
So,
20 out of 20 for pies.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really like the part where he ate a lot of pies.
I think I'd recommend it to most people. I think I prefer it. You know. So
Yeah.
it gets a favorable score. I'll figure out why I want to score it later. You can look it up on the blog.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a life-changing piece of writing. It reads like one of the better episodes of Star Trek, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that's why I was saying, like, you have the two characters, you have two different, you've got your McCoy and your Spock. One's the more emotional type, one's the more rational logic type, and then the guy in the middle has to
There's a
figure
charismatic
it out.
captain who can negotiate between both of their advice and find the right balance. Yeah,
So that's tough.
that's tough. It's another.
He's tough. See what I did there? I'm pretty good at wordplay. I give myself a 20 out of 20. If you want to look at my review whenever it's up, it's on our blog at blog.wordsaboutbooks.ninja.
That's true. If you want to tell us that you would like to see more tough, you can reach out to us on Twitter at WABpod or on Instagram at Words About Books Podcast. You can also send us an email at wordsaboutbookspod@gmail.com. And if you really think that we went the extra mile on this one, we did not, you could buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/WABpod.